I often get a lot of questions from podcasters that are using their podcast to grow their businesses that they want to make sure their podcast is differentiating them in the space. They want to be sure that the content that they're creating is connecting to potential clients, connecting to their audience with the idea of making sure that it is a conversion tool for their business. And one of the best ways to do that is to really work with a strategist to ensure that your content strategy, how you're formatting your show, and all of those things are set up to optimize conversions, to lead to more lead generation, to lead to more sales. And often we find that people get maybe hung up on the fact that if they're doing a podcast, that it has to only be a Q&A interview, show up, interview a guest, record content, wash, rinse, repeat. But that's really not necessarily the case. In fact, it's even more important if you're using your podcast as a business development tool to make sure you have opportunities in your content to really showcase your expertise. And this is a really good example of being able to mix long form, which are those pretty typical Q&A type focused interview segments, along with the integration of short form content into your podcast content strategy. So for example, the Crazy Wealthy podcast, they have a long form where they interview a guest and they bring in experts and really be able to, engage and entertain and educate the audience with that longer form Q&A format. And then also they do what's called a Fix It Friday, which is a shorter form. And by shorter form at Produce Your Podcast, we define that as 15 minutes or less, where Jonathan, who is the host of the podcast, actually comes on and does his own solo piece of content where it's very tactical, it's very practical, and it's very data-driven. And we heard from him last week, as a matter of fact, that it was the Fix It Fridays that actually closed a client for him directly from the podcast. And it was a result of them really connecting with Jonathan and really being able to elevate that know, like, and trust factor, because what's more important when you're moving your money to someone to manage it is to make sure that you feel like that they are skilled in that area, that they're aligned with you, that they would be the type of financial wealth manager you would want to work with. And so that combination really, really worked well by doing the long form with the guest interview and the short form of him solo doing his database, tactical, practical, more deep dive into his methodologies.
Level up your podcast with advice from the pros at Produce Your Podcast. Subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay updated. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and share it with your network. For more expert tips and services, visit produceyourpodcast.com.